The next target I'll touch on is the one relating to sort of broader economic returns. And there are two components to achievement of this target. There's government revenues from licence and access fees. So these are the fees that foreign fishing nations pay to Pacific Island member countries in order to be able to fish in their waters. The other component of the economic returns indicator is the contribution of the harbour sector to the GDP of Pacific Island countries. So in terms of licence and access fee revenue, and that's what the graph on the screen currently is referring to, the figure does show a very large growth in the overall value of licence and access fee revenue to Pacific Island countries. And I'd really want to emphasise that this has been achieved from purse seine vessels. So these are the boats that fish for primarily skipjack tuna, as distinct from the longline fleets that fish for albacore and big eye and yellowfin primarily. These higher returns from access fee revenue have been achieved from purse seine vessels operating under the Vessel Days scheme, managed by the parties to the Nauru Agreement, the PNA, and the office set up there. We'd note that the level of growth of access fees in this area has slowed in recent years, but you'll see the dramatic increase from 2010 through to 2016 is the most recent figures on this graph, but it's continued to rise. And I guess in contrast to the relatively low levels of returns that we're still seeing in the longline fishery, as I was talking about before, and that remains a key challenge for us going forward. In terms of the other indicator of economic returns, and that's the contribution of the harbour sector to gross domestic product, again we've seen that level increase to its highest recorded level in 2017, and again that's really being driven by the purse seine fishery and the significant increase in recent years in the price of skipjack and yellowfin tuna. It's really rebounded in the last year or so, and that's contributed to these higher returns and higher component of fisheries in the GDP of member countries. So again, a positive story. The last slide that I want to focus on here is the one relating to employment. So total direct employment in the fishing industry, and it continues to grow. So latest figures providing 22,000 jobs in 2016, which is an increase of around 6,300 since 2013. The roadmap had anticipated an increase of 18,000 jobs from the 2013 total, and up to 9,000 jobs created in the first 5 years. So the current trends indicate that we're on track and that target is achievable. These increases have mainly been in the processing sector in 2 or 3 FFA member countries. I think particularly Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea. That's where we've seen a big increase in the number of Pacific Islanders employed in the broader fisheries sector. We're now starting to see some increase in employment of crew on fishing vessels, and that's the harbour sector up on this graph, and you'll see that's also starting to increase, and there are a number of new initiatives that are designed to build on that trend. One of the challenges with jobs on fishing vessels is being able to compete with the crew on foreign fishing vessels. And some of you will have maybe seen recent news about human rights abuses at sea, the very low standards of conditions on fishing vessels operating in some of the distant water fleets, particularly on the high seas where it's harder to get a handle on exactly what's happening on vessels. So this has become a major issue globally, and it's one where FFA member countries are looking to take the lead in addressing that issue as it pertains to fisheries in the Pacific region and particularly in our waters. So that's one of the areas that ministers identified for future work. There are certainly things that FFA member countries can do in terms of the standards that we set for fishing on vessels that are licensed to fish in our waters. But we're also going to be looking to take this issue into the Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Commission, where we engage with other fishing nations on issues such as this, and we really need to push to ensure that jobs on fishing vessels are the sort of jobs that we want to be available to Pacific Island people, and at the moment that's not necessarily the case, and we need to ensure there's a level playing field out there as well. And again, this is about also important to improving returns from the longline fishery to Pacific Island countries and ensuring that we can get in there and compete and that the fishery is not only being sustainably managed, but it's being managed in a way that human rights abuses are not taking place, that there are good standards of work and good labour standards for all involved, I'd add to say, for all crew on all fishing vessels. And that's what we'll be working collaboratively to achieve. I'll just touch briefly on a couple of the other issues that are raised in the report card for this year. So with respect to trade and investment, following substantial growth between 2010 and 2012, we saw values actually fall each year up till 2015, and that was due to falling fish prices. These are global commodities, particularly the skipjack tuna for canning, and the price does fluctuate based on a whole variety of factors, including things like fuel prices and also the prices of other commodities. The target for 2020 was an increase in 25% from 2015 levels, and that was actually likely to have been achieved in 2017 as a result of that recent increase in the last year or so in the value of the catches from FFA member countries' waters. And we'll be looking at doing some further work along with the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat on further diversification of export markets in the future. So looking at how we access a broader range of markets in Asia and Europe and so forth. The last goal in the roadmap that you'll see is one related to food security, and the challenge there was to ensure an additional 40,000 tonnes of tuna will be available for regional consumption. Recent studies have shown the huge importance of canned tuna to a lot of the local markets in our countries, and there have been studies in, I think, Solomon Islands, Fiji, Papua New Guinea that have all identified that the tuna that's being caught and processed in Pacific Island countries is a major part of our diets and a key element of food security. And there are further studies being anticipated to try and get a better handle on exactly how much tuna is entering into local markets, and increasingly purseine vessels, longline vessels are being required to offload their bycatch into ports in Pacific Island countries so that can also make its way onto the local market.